What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Daniel and Mark Show, brought to you by Hardcore Headstart. My name is Daniel, and that is obviously Big Marky Boy. Marcus, how are you, my friend?
Cheers, mate. Another week gone by already, huh?
Yeah, I know. Another week, another pretty much red stock market, but that's fun.
I always look forward to the Sunday morning because gives me a reason to get up early and get caffeinated and kind of get the brain going a bit. So it's always
Get it
exciting.
flying.
That's it.
Absolutely. So I reckon with the markets being kind of how they are at the moment, last episode we spoke about how to prepare for market corrections. A couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago, we spoke about 4 tips to begin investing. And today, I reckon we're going to speak about kind of 4 tips for maybe the main ones to look at when you're dealing with your personal finances. And the reason I reckon we talk about this today is because with everything in the market pushing down, pulling back, I should say, it's going to be incredibly important to get the first step of getting money into the markets, which is your personal finance. Getting that right is incredibly important at the moment, because if you can do that, then you're going to have more capital to be able to invest in the markets. And when they end up going back to their all-time highs and surpassing them, you're going to be in a much better position than that, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's if you had a crystal ball, you could buy the bottom. You still need money, so you can buy as much as you can. So it
Absolutely.
starts with personal finance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not sure about you, but this is kind of like obviously we both went through the personal finance stuff, but I've
Yeah.
got a younger brother who's 22 at the moment. But I've also got a younger sister who's 17.
Yeah.
And teaching them, kind of the things we're going to talk about today, it's really beneficial, but it's also kind of difficult to get through to them.
Hmm.
I've found, because they want to just do what they want to do.
In what sense? Do you want to sort of tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah.
I think as young people, although we know some older people have somewhat of the answers, we still want to do our own thing,
Yeah.
and we still want to kind of make the mistakes for ourselves. We still want to, or maybe we even think we know majority of the answers because we're egotistical when we're young.
Yeah.
Maybe not egotistical, but just young,
Well,
right?
it's I think it's like I know I shouldn't eat sugar, right?
Yeah.
But I keep getting drawn to it, so it's a little bit of like discipline too. So it's sometimes you believe in the idea, but you need more evidence, or you need more evidence of what the opposite is. What's the consequences of not sort of following through. So it could be fear motivated, or it could be sort of like sort of more positive as well. So like actually seeing little milestones and little sort of achievements along the way.
Well, that's one of my first things I want to talk about today is what what do you want for your life? Because I went through a period, which I've probably spoken about a fair bit of, sacrificing a hell of a lot for 2 to 3 years there, maybe 4 years, of sacrificing very, like, pretty much everything, all social events, all a lot of family events, sacrificing, by eating 80-cent cans of soup and spaghetti and crap like that, right?
Hmm.
But it's very difficult to go to that extent if you don't have a reason for what you're doing or why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is, like, for people, kind of do the thinking to try and work out what it is that you want, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 30 years, right? What do you want for your life? Because then you can reverse engineer and you can see how much work you actually have to do.
Hmm.
So if you want to be a multi-millionaire, you're going to have to spend some of your early years sacrificing a little bit to get money into the markets and let that grow and compound.
Yeah.
Or if you don't know what you want at all and you have nothing to work towards, then you're going to do less than the person who has a target they're trying to hit. I think this just works in like normal goals as well, Marky. Like, if you have any
Yeah.
kind of goals and stuff like that, if you know what you're trying to achieve, and you think about it regularly, we call that
Hmm.
visualization. If you visualize about what you're trying to achieve, you're going to take the action necessary to actually achieve that thing.
Yeah. I think uh, it's also conditioning your brain into believing that you can achieve those long-term things, because especially when you um, especially like if you've gotten into the habit of just like sort of saving until you get to your next paycheck, right? That's all you kind of think about. But once you start sort of saving for slightly longer term goals like a holiday or a car, that kind of is empowering.
Mm.
um, and depending on where you're at, to go from you know s- saving enough just to make it through to your next paycheck, to
Mm-hmm.
like putting aside a third of your pay into something that you're going to touch like 20 years down the track, that's a big shift, right? When it comes
Mm.
to sort of spending all your money to, hey, I'm going to put my money into something that I'm not going to touch for 20 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Is there any examples of kind of in your life you remember of specific ways or specific things you were thinking of that like targets in your life that allowed you to save better?
uh I think like whether it's healthy or not, like I think when I first started on my journey, it was like just hitting sort of round numbers.
Mm.
So, I remember it was a pretty big deal when I hit $10,000 for the first time. I was just like, yes, I'm going to spend money, but I really want to have like that buffer. Um, and the buffer was meant to be for traveling around like on a budget, right? And going
Mm.
around the world for $10,000 at 18. And I hit that target at 18, but I didn't travel, like, so the goal,
Mm.
you don't necessarily end up having it, but it gives you sort of the freedom and the choice. And that's when
Mm.
I sort of learned. So I'd say, I had sort of the round number of 10,000 and then 100,000. And then my goals became more around like having systems rather than like arbitrary numbers. So like
Mm.
I want to have a percentage of my pay go aside. So it's like, I'm sort of uh, I'm sort of automating a lot of what I'm doing. Yeah.
Wow. Well, yours is actually a little bit wiser. Mine was just a little bit more typical of a kid and I want to save for a car.
Yeah. Hey, it works.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
did. Absolutely. So got me
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
All right. Number two, what what tip have you got for the people, Mark? You tell me.
Uh, so my tip is probably like is one where you sort of start by knowing where your money's going. So the way you can do this practically is getting out your statements from your bank. Like whether you're with ING, Commonwealth Bank, one of the big banks, they'll all have an online feature where you can log in online and download your statements. So download your statements for the last 3 months to 6 months, and you know a lot of people aren't going to be happy with what they see, but it's necessary, right? Like, go through this process. It doesn't matter if you're someone who's been managing and very aware of where your expenses are, or the idea terrifies you, right? Like, looking at your statement might scare the shit out of you, and like some people I know like they feel guilty. They don't like the idea of looking into what transactions they are. Even that sort of
Mm.
process itself is like confronting. um, but the tip here is you have to do it, right? So if you're listening to this, you have to do it. So download your statements for the last 3 to 6 months and actually copy those transactions. Either write them onto a piece of paper, or if you've got Microsoft Excel, just copy all those transactions into a spreadsheet just for the
Mm-hmm.
last 3 months, and then highlight all the ones that are repeating. So, some people are going to find like they're drinking way too much bubble tea, for example. That's which I'm guilty of. If your transactions come through like as Gongcha, or whatever it is, your choice of weapon, you need to highlight that. Some people are going to have bunnings, like they spend too much time doing DIY stuff. But yeah, whatever your thing is, you're going to start to see a pattern, and just like start to get a sense of where by doing this, you're going to start to know where you're actually spending your time, your money, and also how much money you're spending each month.
Mm.
So from there, you can kind of go, all right, how much of this do I actually am I comfortable spending? So like, some stuff you're happy to spend, right? If you're someone who goes, uh, I want to save my money, but I don't want to stop having like dinner dates like once a month. Like I like that's my thing. Maybe you like to go out for dinner with your girlfriend or your friends or whatever once a month, and you go somewhere nice. That's fine. List those things out, but then look at things like your subscriptions. You've got your Netflix subscriptions, your Spotify. Are there ways you can kind of like maybe cut back on things that you don't use as much?
Absolutely.
And you'll be surprised, terrified, but also empowered at the same time to kind of potentially make some of those changes. So that's my number one tip. So what you start measuring is what you can start optimizing. So super important.
Ooh. Little Gandhi over here. What a quote. What were the main thing when you first did that? Like the, I guess, expenses versus income little list. What was your, what were the main kind of things that were getting you?
Yeah, you know what? Like, um, I still have. I probably like because I've said this now. I'll probably after this podcast go away and do my own thing now because
Mm,
just as much as when you're working part time, right? As when you start like working a full time job and you've got you start earning a little bit more, you actually start to sort of spend money or like get lazy with where your money goes because you're kind of like you've got that you've got that subscription for Netflix, and then you've got the subscription for Spotify, and then you've got sort of like a like for example, I've got Premiere Pro, which I'm paying for every month, but I've barely been using. So like
mm,
that's like something we're talking about before this, right? Could I
mm.
look at a free alternative software in the meantime while I learn the basics? I don't need all of the functions unless I'm actually I've got like a concerted effort to learn. So for me, it's probably like Premiere Pro is probably like one of them. I'm paying for like each month. It's a great tool. It's worth every cent. But am I using the most of it
Yeah.
right now? Definitely not. So that's one. Um, I know like eating out is like a big one. I, I'll start sort of seeing like like dumplings and like laksa this and that, and like I add it up and I go I've I've spent like $300 a month on eating out, and like that's probably not. I know people who spend way more, like they probably spend that in
I spent way more than that, bro.
but to me, like when you're sort of only taking in like $500 a week, when you're like sort of part time or
Oh,
whatever it is,
absolutely.
you just can't do that. You just can't
Hmm.
do that. Um,
Absolutely.
so I'd say if you're sort of on the lower income or you're studying and you're only working part time or you're casual for whatever reason, I'd say you're probably already doing this, but make it a thing where like don't feel guilty if your friends have income and they want to go out to eat, but just have a thing where you're like, look, I'm trying to save, like communicate with people, say, look, I'm trying to save, right? And maybe you can do a thing where you have friends over and you buy some groceries and you cook together and you hang out, you watch a movie. You spend just as quality time, if not it's probably better, right?
Mm.
But you're also able to work towards your own goals and not just sacrifice all the time. So that's
It's a
something,
ripper.
yeah. That sort of worked for me.
Dude, mine was food so much. Bloody hell. Still is food at this point, to be honest with you. Oh, it's madness. So like we're so convenient these days to have Uber, or
Mm.
I have this thing as well about just restaurants in general. A majority of restaurants, not all of them, but a majority of restaurants can cook considerably better than I ever can.
Yeah.
And I like good food. So I'm like, why am I going to cook the food when someone else who is better can just cook the food for me? But depending on what stage of life, and that doesn't exactly make sense because money is more important than good food.
But you know what? So like in that situation, you just find look at all your friends, find out who cooks the best in your group, and then just plant the seed, be like, hey, why don't I pay for all the groceries? We'll come back to yours and I'll help clean up, but can you cook? by
That's
the
a
way
ripper.
by the way, I'm taking 2 takeaway portions.
It's going straight to my house. All right, my second tip is going to be about kind of the triggers that get people to spend money.
Yeah.
So whether this is a real easy one because you can kind of just reflect on your life again, similar to the 3 months or 6 months that Mark is talking about, and maybe you
Mm,
can do this in like whilst you're also kind of seeing what you spend money on and
mm,
what where your expenses mainly come from. It's very similar to that in regards to finding out what your major expenses are and where you spend those things. Who are the people you're with when you spend the most money? Is that what you want and need at this time? Just kind of reflect on how your life is going and what's going on in it, and is it what you want at this specific time? Like if you don't want to spend money on alcohol, are your friends going out to the bar all the time and you're being dragged along? So you need to be more
yeah,
disciplined and strong in that area, right?
that's true. And
Um,
like, like on along those lines, right? Like, let's say if you're just someone who likes to go out and sort of and socialize, right? You're naturally going to spend more money. But things like buying bottled water, like what if you just you continue to go to restaurants, but you paid $10 for or $20 for a really nice bottle of water,
mm,
like a reusable one, and you stop paying like $5 for a bottle of water every time you head out,
mm.
and you get thirsty,
Yeah,
especially in summer.
you get those things. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm just gonna like add on to that one as well. In regards to triggers, it's a little bit away from that, but I
Mm,
think people have an idea when it comes to personal finance all the time. Is it always has to be about sacrificing and saving money.
yeah,
I think there is also a conversation being made of like, putting the work in other areas to get more skills so that you can earn more income, and then not upgrade your lifestyle as well.
yeah,
Keep your expenses the same as they are whilst your income increases, and then that way you get some more power and strength in your position or in your life position, because you've got more excess cash to then invest and to save and et cetera, et cetera. But I think people always focus on the sacrificing and the saving part. I just want to maybe a little convey on into our conversation today is like, yeah, maybe try and focus again as earning more income
mm.
so
Yeah,
we can get that.
yeah, and I guess like
Or at your job, sorry, at your job, work more hours at your job, not like a little side hustle. I just want to make sure that is clear, because I'm a big believer in going hard at your 9 to 5 whilst you're there, instead of spending or allocating more time on a little side hustle. But yeah, sorry, Mark, you
yeah,
go.
yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think any opportunity to do overtime, any opportunity to potentially work weekends or pick up one extra shift once a month, that's obviously going to be better advice, especially when you're sort of like earning less, because you know when you're working part time or you're working casual, um, unless you're working some lucrative job, chances are you can save and choose not to buy blueberries or whatever it is from the supermarket and cut and
Mm,
skimp on as much as you can, but you're really not going to be able to save that much. So
mm,
that effort is definitely worth sort of focusing on building your income. Uh, but yeah, um, I'd say, yeah, I'd say like aside from like cutting back on, sorry, making more income, you can sort of you can also look for ways to sort of like purchase higher quality products, which might seem more expensive, right? But they
mm.
actually save you money in the long term. So like
Yeah, absolutely.
one of the worst decisions is buying multiple, sort of pairs of shoes that are kind of expensive, but you don't really like, but then you go through them and then you kind of waste it. Same with clothes. But if you spent a little bit more, bought like really good shoes or a great
Mm.
mattress or whatever, that might last you a lot longer. So buying
Yeah, sure.
quality but less can also work.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Or you just spend nothing and cop it.
Yeah.
Which is yeah. There's I think there's nuance. There's so many ways to do this, right? It's not like there's one specific way. We all did it maybe a little bit differently as well, Marky. I'd
Yeah.
say, didn't we? So it's there's nuance to everything.
Yeah, 100%. I think like one of the things for me is um probably like sometimes with uh sort of like tech equipment. So like for example the microphones, you can buy a whole bunch of cheap ones and kind of go, oh yeah, they'll do, and like I don't sort of work so much. Or you can sort of spend an extra $100, you get a really good mic. And this microphone that I'm using now I've used for like 3 years. So
Yeah, absolutely. And if if your job requires that, or you're doing something that's making you income that requires that, that's a
mm,
great investment, isn't it?
yeah. and
Absolutely.
and like a lot of tools that will sort of help you, um, a lot of tools or a lot of like tech or whatever you buy, if you need it to do what you need to do, they all have sort of uh, like a point of diminishing returns. So a lot of
Mm.
things do get a lot better when you spend a bit more up until a certain point, and you just need to
Yeah.
figure that sort of value for money point for everything,
Past a certain point, it's just branding.
Yeah, or 3 times the price for 10% better quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, true. Where it
Yeah,
just doesn't make sense.
yeah. Am I for professionals if it's helping you make more of an income? But if you're sort of
Sure.
like sort of just working things out and it's not making you income yet, you don't need to
Mm,
spend this stupid amount of money just for that
absolutely.
marginal improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What is your fourth tip
My
for me,
fourth,
Marky?
my fourth and my final tip. Yeah, my fourth tip uh, is to try to automate as much of your personal finances as possible so that you don't have to allocate bandwidth and therefore make decisions every month and make it
Mm,
feel like a chore. And one of the ways I've done this is it's a follow on from figuring out where your expenses is. So when okay, I make X amount of dollars, number one, pay yourself first. So put money aside that you want to save or invest. So that might be 10%, 20%, or more aggressive if you're very disciplined and you can afford to. Um, so I'll create a separate account, call it investing or call it savings.
hmm.
As soon as my income comes from my job, right, that pay is automatically going to go into the investment account, and then
Hmm.
I've got an emergency account. If you don't have an emergency account, which is usually like 3 to 6 months of your expenses, so let's say each month you spend $2,000, right? You should have roughly like $6,000 just sitting in an account in case you get into a car accident, something unexpected comes up. It means you can sort out those issues with cash. Uh, so yeah, I've got three accounts. One's pretty much your expenses, so that covers discretionary spending. So that's things like shopping at the supermarket. That includes like sort of going out and buying your bubble teas or like going to the
Hmm.
restaurants and whatnot. And then you've got like sort of like a more like a midterm account. So things like your registration, your car comes up. You need to upgrade or buy like a new pair of shoes, like
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And then the third account is investing. So like if you speak to your employer, they can actually automate it so that your funds actually go straight into these three different accounts straight away. And that's 80% of employers. But if you're in the 20% where they don't offer that option, you can set up automatic transfers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, Marky, because I have a differing kind of opinion in regards to emergency funds,
Yeah.
where because a majority, well, all of my investments, you say, are in things that are liquid. All right,
Yeah,
so I can get my hands back on them quickly. I have a considerably smaller emergency fund. I have it like for years. I've had it to like $1,000,
yeah. Well,
regardless.
I think you're probably like the exception to the rule because in a pinch, you're happy to basically like live on noodles if you have to. Like
Yes,
you're happy to go back to that if you need to.
certainly not happy, but I will.
That's that's what I mean. But like let's say if
Yeah,
you've
yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, so it's I mean that's more for like that's more for like let's say you're in a relationship, right? You're paying rent and one of you could potentially lose your job and that's going to sort of put things
Right,
in a pinch. But
right,
also like if you're someone who has assets, right? Like if you have a car, then you're more likely to have to potentially pay an excess if you get into an accident,
right.
um, and just like little unexpected things.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
right. I think it depends on your age as well, right? Obviously, like between the
yeah,
ages of 16 to 20, you probably don't
yeah,
need a large emergency fund because you have like, well, what's going to happen to you?
yeah.
Like a parent, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe in the ages of like when people start getting their houses and increase it slightly.
yeah.
Sometimes I do feel the
And
financial community overestimates how much money we need on hand.
yeah, well, it's also 3 months of your expenses.
Hmm.
So it's not 3 months of your salary or your whatever you're making, right?
Yeah,
So if your lifestyle is you know if your lifestyle is like uh, $300 a month, that
sure.
might that might be 3 months expenses for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess like the principle there is like you don't want to. Yes, you've got your assets, but you don't want to have to sell your stocks just so you can pay rent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good premise for sure. Absolutely.
Mm.
I thought, like, why don't we leave the audience as well with a book that I'm sure both of us would recommend, that being Rich Dad Poor Dad
Yeah.
by good old
100%.
Robert Kiyosaki. I think that's the fundamental, um, the beginning book that we kind of say everyone getting into personal finance needs to read. Even if you're like 20, 30, 40, 50, you haven't read it yet, read it. Like it's a blueprint for personal finance and investing in general. A lot of like
Yeah.
financial knowledge. I might pop it up on the screen here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you also mentioned another book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Is that
Yeah, yeah, that's
it's
right.
that's a fable, isn't it? Like it's
Yeah, so Marky's second point on what he was talking about, of having everything split and pay yourself first, it explains that with kind of an olden day example,
mm,
which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's a good read. It's a story, which is always enjoyable. I like listening to stories.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Two absolute like, classics, I think. The Richest Man in Babylon and Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
absolutely, absolute bangers. Do you have any final points there, Marky?
No, not really. I think just to recap, uh, your you've got your practical side, but then you've also it's important to consider what's motivating you actually sort of carrying out those things. So like actually understanding your reason. So like what's the bigger picture? Sort of understanding and having awareness of where your expenses are going, uh, sort of automating the process. And what was there was one other tip that you had, which
The
was
the triggers to
yeah,
where you actually kind of actually spend that money. You know, what's
yeah,
making you spend that money, whether it's environment, whether it's people, etc., etc.
yeah, exactly right. So understanding your triggers. So those are four tips. But
Oh,
yeah,
and the
no,
bonus one,
the bonus one.
the bonus one of try and actually increase your income as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Pick up extra shifts. Find ways to make a little extra money if the opportunity comes up.
Absolutely. All right. Well, today was fun. It was short. It was a little bit of a quicker one.
Yeah.
I hope the people enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, share it to your friends. Click the notification bell to know that when we upload, because we are doing it regularly and we are enjoying it regularly. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
See ya. Bye.
Catch ya.